I'm Stephani Shelton here in Prague, the Czech Republic, for a conversation with leadership coach and author Pepper de Callier. Now, Pepper is a best-selling author of 3 books on leadership and personal development. They're called the Common Sense Wisdom Trilogy. He's a newspaper columnist, a senior executive coach, and founder and executive director of Prague Leadership Institute. He was voted top corporate leadership coach in Europe in 2015 by the London-based All Media. Pepper has devoted his career to understanding counseling and coaching leaders globally. He was formerly a partner at 2 of the most respected executive search and counseling firms in the world, Stuart and Heidrick Struggles. Pepper has advised executives in Asia, North America, and Europe. Now, Pepper's also deeply involved in the development of future leaders. He's a founder and member of the supervisory board of the Aspen Institute of Prague, and he has mentored many young women and other rising executives. Pepper, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Stephani. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
You are sitting here as both an American and a longtime resident in the Czech Republic and in other places in Europe. I'm sitting here pretty much with an American viewpoint on leadership. This is a small country coming out from under the yoke of centuries of being run by other countries with just tiny little periods when they were on their own as a republic. Is there a difference now since the Velvet Revolution, more than 25 years ago, in the way a leader in this country, both political and corporate, looks at leadership than, say, from a big, powerful a country like the U.S.?
I think the simple answer to that is no. That politics being what it is lends itself to a very populistic framework. And I think we're seeing that not only in the Czech Republic or in the United States, for example, right now with the candidate of Donald Trump, the candidacy of Donald Trump. I think we're seeing it in other countries too. Right now, Turkey is a good example where Erdogan is marshaling the public against, the enemy of the traitors and so on. So I think that the the similarity is there, and right now at this stage in time, it's populism when it comes to the political world. In the business world, I will say this, that I have dealt with leaders in a number of different parts of the world, as you know. The leaders that I have dealt with here in Central and Eastern Europe, frankly, have been surprising to me in their grasp. Now, I'm not talking about all of them, obviously, but I'm talking about a significant number of them. Their grasp of what I call the physics of leadership, and that's cause and effect. The grasp that they have of understanding the value of the people who work for them and how to help those people grow and so forth. And there's some wonderful, wonderful examples here in Central and Eastern Europe. And I think that there are, of course, bad leaders here, just as there are in the United States or England or Afghanistan or wherever you want to look. But I think there are no what I would call pure geographical differences. I think we can get into the trivia of how do you shake hands in certain countries and the different colors that you don't put in a gift and how some places you don't wrap a gift a certain way. I mean, we can get into that, which I call cultural trivia. There are certain elements of culture that come in to the aspect of leadership, ways in which respect is displayed, for example. Some cultures, it's with downcast eyes. Some cultures, it's a much less reserved way, but it's a more engaged way. I mean, there are different ways to look at this. But there are some things that are universal that I have found in my work with people and leaders. One of them is to be heard. People, no matter where they are in the world, want to be heard. They want to be part of something that they're involved in. And the other thing is being cared about. Care about me. You don't have to like me, but care about and understand the challenges that I'm facing in my daily life and what you're asking me to do.
Do you think that in this country, which in many cases has been a closed-off society, partially because of communism, but also partially because they're, an ethnic group unto themselves, as the Poles are, as the Hungarians are. I mean, this is the way Europe is. Do those people that you're talking about, the citizens here, see their leaders in those terms? I mean, do they look for that? Or are they just going, because I see a great deal of disinterest in the political discourse and not any particular interest in the business discourse. They're just going about their lives, and in the summertime they go out to their places in the country and swim and don't care. And there seems to be a lot more of that here than, say, in the United States.
Well, the analog to me would be, in fact, I could run straight to the United States for the relevant analog to this. And I would go back to what I mentioned about John Zogby earlier about the millennials. They believe in government, they distrust politicians. And this we see, you get away from the conventions where all of the true believers are. Get out into the countryside of any country and talk to people. And they, I think you're going to find, believe that their voice really is probably not heard at the seats of power. And they realize that through their experience, the perception they have is that what they have to say is not going to have any impact at all on what is done, that in many cases, it's already predestined. A leader may come out and ask for opinions or something, but they have seen in the past, this is just window dressing. The guy's already, or the woman's already made up their mind. They're going to do it anyway. Whether it's true or not, I can't say. I haven't been there in all those instances, but I have talked to enough people to know that this is the erosion of democracy, or the perceptual erosion of democracy. And I think it holds true in a number of countries.
I must be an anomaly then, because I still believe in that one person, one vote that I was brought up with in the United States.
I don't, by the way. Just to interject that, I don't, and I'll tell you why I don't. I think it's a myth. I think that on a very numeric level, yeah, it's correct. I have one person, I have one vote. But that's not how it's meant. What's meant, I think, by that is that every vote really counts when it comes to getting points across, when it comes to formulating these powerful messages, of leadership and direction in a country. And the reason I don't believe it is this. When, let's just say, I'll use myself as an example. If I can donate $50 million to a political party, do you think that gives me just one vote in helping that party determine its direction? I don't think so. And I think that one of the worst things that's happened to politics in the United States, for example, the creation of these super PACs, the creation of this unlimited flow of money that comes into the political process. And, I was just speaking with my wife about this not long ago. She said, isn't it funny, almost ironic, that on your tax forms, there's a box to check if you want to donate $1 to a political campaign? And that's the irony of this situation. It's the real experience is a disconnect from what the desired outcome or the desired vision is.
Well, I think you're right on with that. And I think maybe that has to do with the distrust of big business, because it's the big business executives most publicized in terms of the contributions to those PACs, whatever side they're on.
Right.
Getting back to the business world here and kind of wrapping this up.
Mm-hmm.
We're all told constantly to, and I'm using the cliche, embrace change. But change is coming so rapidly now that I am wondering, from a leadership standpoint, if anyone can truly keep up with it and embrace it and get on top of it and get ahead of it and lead while all of this is going on. You formulate a policy, and by the time you formulate it, something has changed.
Okay. Short answer is no. It's impossible. And but there's a good side to this. There is a way to approach it. You know, the 20th century model of leadership looked very different. It was very much Cold War, from up to down, you do this, you do that. I know everything about this company. I'm the CEO, boom, 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 boom. And then this crazy thing happened called the internet, the technology age, and so on. And things began to happen at unprecedented speed. And competitors not only came from out of left field, they came from places you didn't even think they could come from. Utility companies starting not commercial, but consumer lending to their. Whoever would have thought of this? Retail department stores creating phone cards for people. Come on, where did all of this come from? And so, there's no way that you can, and I'll use your words, stay on top of it. And if you choose, if you are a person, and I see people on a daily basis that are worried about becoming overwhelmed by change, okay? And if you look at change in from the standpoint of, I have to be on top of it, I have to be in front of it, you will become overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Now, here's what my advice is to people when I'm called in to talk about these things. Change is inevitable. We all know that. Okay, that's something we've talked about since the dawn of history. That the only thing that you can count on is change. Change will happen. It's the speed and the complexity of it today that's become very, very worrisome to people. But one of the things that we have to understand that differentiates the 21st century from the 20th century is we have to find a way to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Think about that for a moment. Now, the uncomfortable part comes from all of this change happening at once. All of this, it's happening everywhere. But the getting comfortable part comes from understanding that we are going to find a way through this. This is how we're going to do it. So what you do then is understand how to form your team, who to put in charge of certain things, how to deal with accepting a world that is not 100% clear. We have to deal with a certain amount of ambiguity. We will never have 100% of the information to make a decision. So this is a little uncomfortable. So we have to get comfortable. And it comes from practice, and it comes from these, what I call incremental acts of competence. Okay? Little incremental acts of competence. I ask you to stay in tune with this one area. You come back, and you come back with an idea. Wow, that was really good. That was an incremental act of competence for this team. Someone else does it. That's another incremental act. Now, I, as a leader of this team, put all these little incremental acts of competence together. That gives me confidence that we can face change. Then what happens? My team members look at me. They see I feel confident. They feel confident that we have the elements here to deal with change. We know how to deal with it. So, are we uncomfortable with it? Yeah. But you know what? We can do it.
That's a very, very keen way of looking at it, I think. And it also requires a leader who is very open to picking up on these ideas and willing to listen to them and use them and not say, it's me, me, me.
Well, there's an interesting phenomenon that all alphas, and I deal with alphas, in the zoological sense, the alpha male, the alpha female, strong leaders, and I call myself a recovering alpha, by the way. But there's a curse of the alphas that we all must deal with on a daily basis, and there's a psychological term for it. It's called self-enhancement bias. Let me tell you what it looks like in the real world. Sometimes I think I'm a little bit smarter than I really am. Or sometimes I think I'm a little bit better at something than I really am. That's self-enhancement bias. All alphas are cursed with it. Now, the ones that get beyond that are the ones that recognize it and then learn how to deal with it. And what I mean by that is a very important point, by the way. If self-enhancement bias goes unchecked, what happens is this. Communication with me begins to shut down. People don't come to me with ideas or push back because they know that I know everything, that I think I know everything. So what's the use? Let's just do what he says, all right? That's the beginning of a death spiral to a leader, because the most important thing to leaders is information. And if they can't get information from people, then they begin, or they get it from only people who tell them what they want to know, then they begin to really collect faulty information, and then that's the beginning of the end. But to the alphas that say, okay, I know where this is going, I've got to hold myself back. To the people who listen first before they speak, those are the people who learn. And that is what is very important today.
All right, let's wrap this up with one question about some alpha women, the women leaders. You've done a lot of work with young leaders who are women and with mentoring women. We finally have a woman candidate for president of a major political party in the U.S. We have women leaders in Great Britain, in Germany, in many other countries right now. We have women leaders at the head of corporations, big corporations. Is there really any difference in the way a woman leads?
I get asked this question a lot. I was part of a founding group of 4 individuals who founded a mentoring program for senior women executives here in Central and Eastern Europe. And I've done a lot of work, pro bono work, with younger female executives, and then through my coaching practice have worked with more mature senior leaders. And I've written about this experience. The answer to that question in my world is no. There is no difference on a broad scale basis. Now, having said that, I will say this, that part of my feeling about that is that I am very consciously unbiased on that topic. I try to see people as individuals and try to address their issues and problems individually. I don't like to look at people as groups. Now, there is overwhelming statistical evidence that gender balance creates stronger organizations, more productive, more profitable companies. But hear me out. I say gender balance. Gender balance is more powerful than either all male or all female on either end of that spectrum. So what we're talking about is balance, okay? So that would give some people to reason to believe, hey, wait a minute, there must be some interaction of differences here that create this balance, okay? So I'll give you that. But what we do know is that when you bring these men and women together in a business or an organization in a balanced way, I'm not talking about having a token male on the board or a token female. What happens is there's a more holistic view of what's going on. There is a more rounded concept of how to approach things. There's much more empathy. Now, since you asked the question in the beginning, I'm sure there are a number of studies that people like Daniel Goleman and so on can point to where women have a tendency to be more empathic leaders. But my own personal experience is this. I have found and worked with just as many men who I felt were extremely empathic. That's why I take a very unbiased approach to my original answer to that question.
Just to ask one more question about that, and it goes with the empathy that a woman is supposed to feel, as you pointed out. And I guess it could go both ways. You hear all the time that women are cooperative. They work better in groups, that they listen to other members of the group, and they're much more willing to do that. But on the other hand, don't you have to, and this was one of the fears with Hillary Clinton as president, don't you have to exhibit or feel that you have to exhibit a strength as a woman, maybe beyond what a man even would have to exhibit because you're a woman?
Well, obviously, I can't answer that from the standpoint of being a woman because I'm not. I would say that we have a very distorted, and I mean this is a very general thing, we have a very distorted view of what strength looks like in a leader. When I speak to groups and I ask them to picture in their mind what being confident looks like, I can just see the people straightening up in their chairs and, just puffing their chest out a little bit, and they're thinking of standing tall and speaking with an important voice and so on. But self-confidence doesn't always look that way. Self-confidence can come from someone who has a very deep inner feeling and belief about something, and they just speak in a certain way that resonates. So it looks different. And so I want to get away from the stereotypical view of this. And again, I want to go back to one of the problems that I see in working with leaders is that there is a tendency to view things in a very generalistic way, to group people, to say, well, those Czechs, they act this way, or those Americans. And I've had people joke with me. They say, oh, you don't act like an American. You don't stand up and yell and wave your arms around and so on. And I take the humor in that. But my message is, and when I work with leaders in different parts of the world, what I try to get them to understand is that life is not lived as a generalization. Life is lived by one person at a time. And I want them to see that person. I want them to see the person they're dealing with. I want them to try to understand that person. And from there, we can begin to build great things.
Well, that's a perfect place to end this interview, although one question can always lead to another. Pepper de Callier, leadership coach, and my friend, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Stephanie. It was my pleasure.
I'm Stephani Shelton.